I don't at all, actually. I mean, if you look at the most recent levels of income into the sponsorship industry, gambling, I think, only comes about eighth. It's only putting in about 25% of what the automotive industry puts into the industry. And I don't think it's becoming too reliant on it at all, no. No, I don't. I tell you why I don't, and that is because sporting integrity is very important to both the sports themselves and to the gaming industry. If you think about what sponsorship stands for, it's all about a marriage, a partnership. So it's in the gambling industry's interests that sports retain their integrity, because otherwise they're not going to want to become involved with them. And the same occurs vice versa. A sports governing body is very reliant on maintaining its integrity. And if it thought that that was going to be damaged by an association with a gaming company, then I'm quite sure that it wouldn't become involved with one. I think it is a risk, yes. I think it definitely is a risk. You've only got to look at what has happened recently in cricket and cricket's response to that threat, to understand that illegal gambling and criminal activity is indeed a threat to all sports. Cricket has been highlighted recently, but I think all sports should be on their guard against such occurrences. I think most of them are. I think a few of them have a little behind the way with this. I think that, again, if I use cricket as an example, I think that the way that they've tackled it and their anti-corruption department has led the way for other sports rights holders. And I think you'll find that there's been a lot of liaison with cricketing authorities, with the football authorities, and with the other rights holders to take a lesson, if you like, from the way cricket are dealing with the problem. And using that example in the way that they may tackle anything that may come into their own sphere. Well, this is a question that comes up quite a lot about there is no research that we know of, that we've seen, that proves that sponsorship by alcohol companies or by gaming companies has any effect on youngsters. However, there is a duty of care by governing bodies to behave responsibly. And so we at ESSA have always advocated that such sponsors that I've mentioned, gaming, alcohol, and so on and so forth, they should behave responsibly towards underage spectators, underage fans, and they should take all precaution so that they behave responsibly, that they don't necessarily aim their activities directly at that audience. Well, it's interesting. If you take the example of Betfair, for example, they have just announced in January that they've got a memorandum of understanding with the IOC. That was the latest announcement. In fact, I think they've got about 48 such memorandums of understanding. And that means that what they do is they work with governing bodies to identify rogue activity as soon as it happens, and they're working with those bodies to actually say this activity is unusual, we need to look into this, we need to investigate this kind of activity. And I think that's a really positive move towards sponsors in the gaming industry and the rights holders working together to try and identify exactly where this activity is coming and to try and do something about it as soon as it happens. I think where Betfair have sponsorships, they always take this line that they want to behave responsibly. I think they're taking the lead in terms of working with rights holders. I think where they have sponsorships, obviously, this would be height of mind with them. And I think they're using it as a way to try and lead other gaming sponsors to follow suit. Well, when you talk about properly regulated, I mean, the European Sponsorship Association advocates that self-regulation is the way to go. I don't think, and within the sponsorship industry, that we want regulation, legislation, anything that curtails the rights of the rights holders or the sponsors joining up together as they see fit. So I think self-regulation is the way to go. Behaving responsibly is the way to go. And this is what we work very hard with European authorities and the European Parliament to try and advocate and to push in terms of the way that we see the behaviour of sponsors across Europe going in the future. That's a difficult one because much as I think the European Union tries to harmonise legislation, and I say that in the caveat of we wouldn't really recommend legislation, we would want self-regulation. But I think you'll find that rules and regulations within each territory across the European Union at the moment do differ. I think there's a lot of work going on to try and harmonise those, but I think there's quite a long way to go from what I understand. I think there will always be peculiarities within each territory, so it's a bit of a minefield, but work is being done to try and harmonise it. But as I say, I would put a caveat in there and say that, you know, legislation is one thing, self-regulation is another. I think there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes to work hard at harmonising legislation. Within the sponsorship sector, as I've said earlier, we do promote self-regulation, but I think there is a lot of work going on, but we at ESSA aren't part of that. Well, I think that self-regulation is the way to go. As I've mentioned before, sponsorship's all about two bodies getting together, a sponsor and a rights holder in the main, and they both. Integrity is important to both of them. So I think that what you'll find is that it's in their mutual benefit to work together to make sure that the integrity of the sport and of the sponsor's reputation is paramount, and that's what they will both be working to in an ideal partnership. Well, I think it's well known that the internet is very difficult to control. And I see this, along with every other industry probably, as being a potential danger, especially with gaming. I'm not familiar on how we're going to, what the plan is to try and control the internet, but certainly that is a potential threat in the future as to how sponsors can control where their messages go and how they're portrayed. I think global sports are more susceptible, and by definition that means they've got a larger area to cover and more populace to control. It's a sweeping statement to say cricket is more susceptible than other sports, and I don't feel that's true. It's just that, if you like, I suppose, illegal gambling and match fixing has taken a hold of cricket because it is so popular in certain parts of the country, but certain parts of the globe. I think we've heard about cricket, so it's easy to see how that can be affected. I think hopefully we won't see other sports following down that line, but it may be that they haven't been highlighted to us yet. I think it's unfortunate for cricket, but then on the other hand, I think it's an opportunity for them to show how they can lead the way in battling this particular problem and talking and liaising with other sports governing bodies as to the methods they're using and hopefully helping them prohibit the same thing happening to other sports.